started
Hit
it.
succeed. Okay.
I did it. All right. Ben's reminder alarm worked. Nice work,
That is
Ben.
excellent.
Yeah, well, we are recording at a funny time, so it's just going to be us and Ben doing Astronomy Cast.
I see Larry there
Yeah,
as well.
I see a few other people as well. In fact, I will say hi to them in a second. So now's your chance to say hello. Hello.
Hi.
It's. I feel like we just hung out last night. So we like have nothing new to talk about. It's so funny. We were like hanging out on the weekly space hangout, which was great. You jumped in at the last minute and joined us. So
Oh, I'm totally happy to.
it was great. I was mentioning to Carla like your because you're doing this daily news show all the time. It's like you before I'd be like, oh, and have you heard this news? You'd be like, no, I haven't heard about this. Like my knowledge is what I heard at the most recent American Astronomical Society meeting when I
It
was.
wasn't that bad, but it was definitely tied to whatever was most hashtagged on Twitter.
Whatever research was happening,
Yeah.
fairly big picture research on whatever whatever was going on Twitter, and now you're going through the news so with such a fine tooth comb that you now have this really comprehensive knowledge of all of the news. You are just again just like you're a one woman wrecking crew.
I'm trying. I'm trying. We'll see if I succeed.
All right, now I'm going to say hi to people.
Okay.
Hello to Andy Cowley, Ben Kalo, Chai Latte Nebula, Guido Bibra, James Dugan, Jan Dryak, sorry, John Safil, Larry Beckham, Lars Ry Jepson, or Yepson, Linda Sedik, LKSBBWS09, Michael Del Santo, Mikhail Hollanders, Nicholas B., Steve Heistand, and Susie Murph. We've got a smaller crowd today because we're doing this at a completely different location. Quad Limit, Aaron Wilson, Zapfan. Hey, everybody. Mike Sheeran. Just keep saying hi. This is how this works. You have to say hi if you're watching this.
I love that you're now thinking like an astronomer, where a different point in time is a different place, even though we're both physically located where we usually are.
That we're a different time now. Is that what I said?
Well, you said we were doing this from a different location.
Right, but it's really a different time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Oh
But they're the
no.
same thing.
Yeah, so we've got a problem because we're now overlapping on Paul's show.
Oh,
Yeah, and overlapping Skylights, but then she just streams nonstop like some
yeah,
kind of
that's hard to avoid.
stream machine. So how can we avoid that? All right, so if you're wondering what it is that you've stumbled into, this is going to be a live episode of Astronomy Cast. We're going to be talking about saving Earth from Mars and saving Mars from Earth. And then we will record the show. And then when we are finished recording the show, we will stick around and answer your questions about space and or astronomy. I'm ready to press record. I learned something valuable about Audacity that will change the way the audio sounds on my side.
What was that? I need to learn this.
Well, it may not be a problem for you. So when you record, maybe it's only in Windows as opposed to on a Mac, but when you record, it was clipping the size, the height that the audio channel is coming in, because Audacity, when it has a stereo microphone, it somehow adds together the sounds to make the size of it. So it was clipping, but it was only going half strength. And so I have to record in stereo and then split the tracks and then drop them out, and that gives me the full range of the sound. So it just wasn't loud in Audacity.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I don't.
Yeah, so when
I've had that problem going into OBS before.
so when I click record in Audacity, my signals never get beyond half the size of the whole recording space. And that's because I was recording in mono. It's so dumb.
Okay. Yeah, no, I record in mono all the time, but I guess it's just the difference with the kind of system I use, because
A Macintosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can go full amplitude.
Yeah, so now I've figured out how to make it fill the whole space with the audio sound noises. I believe that's the technical term. Yeah, so Audacity was clipping the amplitude. And so you have to record in stereo. You can record mono in stereo. What's it doing? I've got it. Let me see here. So I record in stereo. Yeah, I'm recording in stereo on the microphone, and that makes 2 tracks, both of which have the right sound profile. And then I split the track and dump one of them out.
Dang. Okay. Yeah, I don't have to worry about that, luckily.
Yeah, yeah, it's super dumb. But the thing that I hate is just how the why won't it let me kill? Oh, I know why. Okay, I'll be all right. Yeah, but the problem is that you still can't control like Zoom and stuff. Various chat programs like to take control of the audio levels inside your computer.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not
I
what I want.
So I figured out how to get my audio to not do that. The thing that I haven't figured out is how to get my cameras not to auto contrast.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Or autofocus. Yeah.
the autofocus I have found workarounds for,
Let's see.
but all of a sudden my light will go to pot, and it's just because it decided, oh, you moved slightly to the left,
Yeah.
so
Right.
I'm going to adjust
So
the
now
contrast.
we're going to step it down or step it up. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, I hate lighting.
I
Truly hate lighting.
I hate every single part of it. I hate my computer. I hate video cameras. I hate audio devices. I hate it all.
Oh man.
Yeah, all of it. We are so far away from this stuff working the way we want it to, like it should.
So what you're dealing with is the Ira glass. You have the taste, but instead of, you've already put in the however many thousand of hours to
And
develop your skills,
and
but the
dollars
tech isn't there.
and the dollars to buy. I have a graveyard of microphones that I've tried to make go. You know, it's all kinds of audio gear. Like I can just reach out and grab audio gear. I can do this all day. So yeah, no, I hate it all. I hate it all. It's all stupid. Light it on fire, just burn it. Okay.
Yeah, Susie's right. I hate everything in pants. I actually have that as a short code on my computer.
Oh really?
Yes, IHP expands out to I hate everything in pants.
Let us begin the part that we like, which is the actually doing the show part.
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready to press record.
I am pressing. No.
Oh, really? Did something hateable just happen?
Audacity was like, you have switched docking ports since last you used me. You must now close me and reopen me before I will do your bidding.
Jordan Albert is saying use a DSLR instead of a camera. That sounds like a great idea, except that my DSLR, my nice Panasonic Lumix GH5, has no way to put a HDMI output. So what I could do is I could get a video input card, like a special HDMI video input card in my computer, and then just run the output that way. Except, of course, that's going to break in 17 different ways. The Sony ones look like they're pretty good. But do I buy a new Sony camera to make that happen?
So look at what Bill Nash is doing over on Twitch. He's a professional photographer, and he's using one of his old Canon DSLR bodies as a webcam, and it is looking pretty sharp.
Yeah, no, you can definitely do that. But you do need a special interface to go into your computer, right? You can't. You can use a Canon DSLR. There is a way to turn your Canon into a webcam using your computer, but my Panasonic won't do it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just like a million little things.
Well, I love my mic. I have had this mic for years and years and years, and while my preamp bit the dust, my new preamp is fabulous, and I still love my microphone. It's my cameras I hate.
Yeah. All right, are you ready yet?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to press record.
I am pressing record.
Hello,
It is
Susie.
recording. Hi, Susie.
Here we go.
I can max out my volume.
So can I. It's awesome. Now that we figured this out, all right. Astronomy Cast, episode 514, Planetary Protection Protocols. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser, Cain, publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, Dr. Pamela, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
I'm doing great, although hating technology, which was a conversation that we just had. That's just...
It happens.
Yeah.
It evolves quickly and sometimes sideways.
Yeah, exactly. So I may sound a little different in my audio this time, and that's just because I've had to make some changes to the way I've got my audio, so the way it's recording. I don't know if it's going to be better, worse. I guess we'll find out. Do you have anything to shamelessly self-promote this week?
Yes. Go to astrotours.co/starstrider and sign up to spend late August 22nd through the 29th with me touring through the American Southwest, going to great observatories, seeing great landscapes, my favorite landscapes in the world. And hey, there might even be Vegas, baby, involved. So please, please go tour the countryside. This is where I spent my summers growing up, so there's going to be lots of stories to tell.
That sounds great. All right, so as we send rovers and landers to other worlds, we have to think about the tiny microbial astronauts we're sending along with them. In fact, NASA is so concerned about infecting other worlds that it has established the Planetary Protection Protocols, just to be safe. Pamela, how on Earth, or how in space, is it possible for microbes to be a problem if we send spacecraft to other worlds?
Some things do not want to die. That's the fundamental issue.
Yeah.
We die easily. You put us in space, we die. Put a tardigrade in space, put any of a bazillion other extremophiles, microbes, bacterium in space, and they live on and on and on, and just might choose to live on another world where they kill any and all indigenous life.
So do we have any examples of life demonstrating that space is no problem for it?
Yeah, that tardigrade I mentioned. They also go by the name water bear. They are extremely cute. They kind of look like, if you've watched the cartoon version of The Last Airbender, which is the only version you should watch.
Right.
They kind of look like Appa, less fur, more sucky cuteness. But just like the tardigrade that appeared in Star Trek Discovery, they have the ability to push all the water out of their bodies, encapsulate themselves, and just stop respiration for a while. And in this protective state, they can withstand going to space, returning from space, being in space, and then return quite happily to life when exposed to the correct circumstances.
And then, of course, one of the other great stories is when the astronauts flew to the moon during the Apollo missions. They brought back the camera from one of the landers that had already been on the moon for a while. And what do you know? Bacteria. And they were able to revive it. But there is a bit of a controversy, so don't send me that email. That some people believe that it actually wasn't life that had survived the journey, that in fact it had been contaminated here on Earth. So there's a bit of a scientific controversy, but I like the one where it sounds like life can totally handle being on the moon and back.
Me too.
Yeah. So we know, but I mean the point is like they have done tests here on Earth. They've freeze-dried them, put them in vacuum. They have made them cold, made them hot,
radiated them,
just insulted them, and they've been able.
They don't die when you call them names.
Yeah, they don't die. Yeah. neither sticks nor stones nor names. So yeah, we know that bacteria and some of these tiny little life forms can handle pretty extreme environments. Okay, great. So what does that mean then?
Well, that means that the world has been trying to figure out exactly how to handle this for quite some time. There was an original United Nations set of recommendations that were put together back in 1959. It's governed by COSPAR. This is the Committee on Space Research. And in 1964, they issued a resolution. I'm going to read it here. This is Resolution 26, and it affirms the search for extraterrestrial life is an important objective of space research, that the planet of Mars may offer the only feasible opportunity. This was written in 1964, the only feasible opportunity to conduct this search during the foreseeable future. That contamination of this planet would make such a search far more difficult and possibly even prevent for all time an unequivocal result, that all practical steps should be taken to ensure that Mars be not biologically contaminated until such time as this search has been satisfactorily carried out, and that cooperation in proper scheduling of experiments. And it goes on and on. But what it boils down to is, hey, we have this planet, Mars, 1964. It's the only place we know of, because it was 1964, that might have life. Let's not send smallpox blankets.
Right.
It was understood that when Europeans came to the New World, we kind of like killed a lot of stuff, by which I mean lots of tribes of advanced humans with cool civilizations and writing and architecture and art, and we killed them all off with disease.
And not just disease. I mean, we're dealing with the invasive species. We're dealing with rats and various kinds of plants and things that are really hard on our local environment, and they push out the local creatures. And that's the risk, is that you may go and find life on Mars, but it turns out you just found rats and Japanese knotweed.
Or if you live here, stink bugs.
Stink bugs, those are yours? Yeah.
Yeah, Japanese stink bugs.
Yeah, we have knotweed. I'm trying to think what our bug is. Thistles.
Yeah.
And Himalayan blackberries.
At least those are tasty.
Super tasty. Yeah. I don't mind that invasion, but apparently the local plant life doesn't. So you can imagine some situation where we go to Mars and we perform this enormous, difficult, complicated mission to get spacecraft down to the surface of Mars, and the rover digs down and retrieves a sample and does some kind of experiment and finds that there is life there, and it turns out that it was just Earth life that had made it to Mars. And in fact, now Mars is filled with Earth life, and any Mars life that was there is now harder to find.
And so to try and prevent this fate which you describe, they have, by which I mean COSPAR, the United Nations committees, NASA has signed on, have set out a group of different categories of missions that require, per international treaty, cleaning at different levels. So for instance, if you're just doing what's called a category 1 mission, this is a flyby, an orbiter, or a lander on an undifferentiated, metamorphized asteroid or other such life not going to be here kind of object, you're good. Don't worry about it. This is where Bennu is going to go grab a rock. We didn't really put a whole lot of effort into sterilizing OSIRIS-REx, but it's just a lump of rock. We're going to grab a smaller rock off of the bigger rock. We're going to bring it home. No one's worried. In the vastness of time, the ultraviolet light of the sun has killed everything. We're good.
Right. So don't worry about sending a spacecraft. Don't worry about how well you washed OSIRIS-REx. You're not going to infect Bennu as you lightly pluck a rock off the surface of the asteroid and then scoot back home.
Exactly. So these are the don't worry missions. Now, category 2 is where maybe you worry a little. This is flybys, orbiters, landers of objects that we really can't imagine how life might exist. So this is stuff like comets, um, differentiated carbonaceous chondroid asteroids, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Um, these are worlds where probably we don't have life. Now, what's fascinating is when you look at older PowerPoint presentations about this, you start to see things like Titan listed here, Ceres listed here. These are objects that we're now realizing, oh, expletive, they just might have life. So we have to periodically update our PowerPoints.
Right. There's new place. In fact, when we look at Europa and Enceladus, and as you said, Titan, and maybe even Pluto and Eris and Planet Nine, when we find it, and the upper cloud tops of Venus and the permanently shadowed craters. Well, maybe not Mercury.
Probably not.
Yeah. All
Probably
right.
not.
So we've got a more rigorous cleaning. You've got to wash your spaceship a little better.
Yeah, it's one of these things where you should take general care. They actually have guidelines in numbers of, there's a specific bacteria that really likes to leave spores everywhere that they use as a tracing bacterium. So this is where everything is made in a clean lab. They wipe everything down with alcohol as they go, but it's not a huge concern.
Right, right. So they're doing the best they can as they construct the spacecraft. They're trying to minimize the amount of bacteria that ends up on anything, but they're not losing sleep at night if they miss a few. Like there are absolutely going to be bacteria coming along for the ride, just not as many as if you just built your spaceship in the garage and sent it to out into space.
And so then as we continue down this list, we look at more and more dangerous situations. So as we get to category 3, where now we're talking about flybys of things that could have life, Mars, Europa, Enceladus. This is where the way they phrase it is orbiter missions to a target body of chemical evolution and or origin of life interest. It's the opinion of the scientific body that every chance of contamination, which could compromise future investigations, be taken. So basically, if you might crash into it, try to make sure that you're clean. But it's the how clean you need to be in case you crash, not the how clean you're going to be because you're going to be running experiments specifically where life is likely to be.
Right. So what I mean, an example of that might be something like Cassini, where it was intended to fly around.
Or Galileo is exactly the right example to use, where they plunged it purposefully into Jupiter at the end of the mission. And that was planned because Europa.
Right. So it didn't have the level, like it wasn't going to be going down and drilling into the ice on Europa and looking for European space whales. It was going to be orbiting Jupiter in an environment where, under some weird combination of chances, it could end up smashed on the surface of Europa and somehow contaminate Europa. So might as well ditch it into Jupiter just to be safe.
And then we start getting into the, okay, we're going to think really hard about this because we're going somewhere potentially dangerous, but not worst casing it. So this is where you start having category 4 lander missions on these worlds that just might have life. This is Mars, Europa, Enceladus. So here you bake it, you radiate it, you wipe it down, you hope, you chemical. And one of the things that we're running into is this is where we have experience. This is the Viking missions. The Viking missions went to Mars, knew full well that they were looking for life, that they didn't know if where they were landing could have life. So what they did was they literally baked the spacecraft. They put them in a fancy oven, but oven, raised the temperature up 115 degrees Celsius above the boiling point, and just baked them for hours.
Wow.
And the reason they did this was there was no life they could think of that could survive this baking. This was early. We now know
That
better.
was then, right? We know better. And this
And
is, I mean, just to digress briefly, this is sort of part of the problem is that there's all kinds of Russian or Soviet and even American spacecraft that are in all kinds of potentially sensitive locations or have just crashed onto Mars that had no cleaning done whatsoever. So if this was possible, then it's possible that we have already ruined Mars.
it's true.
But that's
It's true.
that's future exobiologist problem, not ours.
And so here we start worrying, especially with things like the Mars 2020. Okay, so we're going there. We're going to be looking for life. We cleaned our spacecraft as well as we can, but processes like baking, those kill everything, but you could still be covered with dead life. And how is that going to affect our experiments? So we have to make sure that we don't just kill it all, but we remove the carcasses.
Right. It's got really morbid really fast.
It got really morbid really fast. And this is getting much more difficult to do. And the National Research Council here in the United States has actually put out a plan. It came out last summer where they called for scientists to rethink how it is that we define these categories, rethink what it is we use as our is this clean enough model, and consider how do we deal with the fact that now we have instruments that we can't radiate because they're sensitive. We have things that we certainly can't heat up because they're plastic or they're made out of epoxies that will melt. How do we deal with atom thick films and detectors that really can't tolerate anything except for a good alcohol swiping? And as we develop more and more fragile and sensitive technologies, our ability to clean things goes down rapidly. So they're working on trying to define new ways to clean things, and this is now where we're arguing over things. But we haven't even gotten to the worst
Yeah, the
possible
most extreme
scenarios.
one.
And this is where we go and we grab a sample from someplace that could harbor life. This is, we send a rover to do the rover equivalent of walking up to one of those dark streaks on Mars. If they're real, I understand there's debate. Grab a sample of dark soil and bring it home. This is where we go to Europa. We drill down, we grab some fluid. There's no plans to do this anytime in the near future. We bring it back. All these kinds of go forth, grab biologicals maybe, and bring them home missions, these are the category 5. They get shifted into restricted Earth return and unrestricted Earth return based on how hazardous these worlds are.
And you've got sort of a
So,
double problem, right? You've got the problem
yeah.
that as you dig into a sample, say you've got this really interesting salty brine that you find on Mars, and you dig into it with your scoop to grab a sample to bring home, you could be contaminating it with whatever Earth bacteria is on the scoop. And then you bring that material home, and now you got the risk of contaminating Earth with whatever life, with whatever material you found on Mars. So 2 planets are at risk now.
And this is referred to as forward contamination, where we take and we contaminate forward, and backward contamination, where we bring things back. And in dividing up each of these categories, the categories really are what is the risk to the world and what is the risk for us. So category 1 is no risk because there's probably not life there and we're not bringing anything back. This is the flyby, the orbit, the land, unboring space rocks. This is OSIRIS-REx at Bennu. category 5 with the return missions, it's still getting divided up, where we're bringing back samples from the moon, which we're pretty sure is dead. So we're careful, but we're not. It's not Andromeda strain we're
Right.
worried about.
Right.
Whereas with those restricted Earth returns from Mars, Europa, and Enceladus, it is exactly the Andromeda strain that we are worried about.
Right. And I mean, we think about like how life here on Earth has evolved perfectly with this sort of mutual arms race. And so people wonder, like, could you get infected by bacteria from Mars? Could you get a virus from Mars? And I don't see that as being the big risk. You have not encountered it at all. It has no real pathways. Like, even there's lots of viruses that have, you can't catch viruses that infect insects because they've evolved to find their way into insects, not into us. But it's that issue of having these life forms that can fill these ecological niches that we have, that it could be the bigger risk. When you think about some poor bacteria on Mars that's lived in a brutal environment, trying to survive near a perchlorate soil with ultraviolet radiation beaming down on it, where the air pressure is low and all it has to breathe is carbon dioxide, and you bring it to Earth and it just goes like, this place is a paradise compared to the horrible nightmare world that I used to live on.
Well, it may require perchlorates. It may require a nightmare to live within.
Maybe, or, was evolved to handle the most extreme environments we can possibly imagine. But the point is, let's not find out.
And the other side of this is, as we're sitting here saying maybe, the reason we say maybe is because the universe keeps proving itself to be more creative than we give it credit for. And this has become a major argument, where we have people saying that since the universe likes to rain meteorites on our heads, cars, warehouses, and everything else, and these meteorites in many cases are coming to us from Mars. Not every case, not a majority of cases, but frequently enough that even people like me have our own sample of Mars rock that came from a Mars meteorite. And the argument is that if all of these Mars rocks can come to Earth and we haven't died yet, do we really need to worry? And the National Research Council, in pulling together top minds to think about this argument, has basically said, yes, we need to worry, because these meteorites in general, while they're still raining on the Earth, they were generated during a handful of collision events that occurred eons ago, probably during the age of the Great Heavy Bombardment. And they've been floating around in space for a good long time before they hit our planet. They were essentially already baked, irradiated, frozen, melted, everything else. And then they went through our atmosphere. So that probably would have killed whatever was on them. But if we're going to these, hasn't been blasted into space in a massive collision millions of years to billions of years ago, if we're instead just like digging in a nice briny mud bit beneath the surface,
Yeah.
we may find that thing capable of killing us that we're not creative enough to know could be there.
All I know is that we don't think of the consequences. We never see all of the unintended consequences. And if there's one thing that we can always predict, is that there will be unintended consequences of any action that we do. So like, just like that alone, like, I'm sure whatever terrible person brought Scotch broom here to Vancouver Island, I thought it would be lovely to have a little piece of Scotland in their garden on Vancouver Island, couldn't imagine this stuff just everywhere on our whole island, killing everything. Like, it's the worst. And so it's just like I know your instinct is like, what's the worst that could happen? And the answer is, you don't know. Let's not find out. Let's just be careful. It's just the smart move.
Yes, it's always cheaper to prevent than to clean up.
Yeah.
So let's be cautious now and not kill everything later.
Like, this is a total rabbit hole, but like, apparently now, like, desalination plants there's like tens of thousands of desalination plants that are dumping toxic brine back into
Brine.
the oceans and wiping out local environments that's collecting down at the bottoms of the oceans and causing problems to coastal habitats. We wouldn't have thought, we thought, well, the ocean is limitless. There's no way we could extract enough and return enough salt to cause a, oh, turns out you can. And so your idea of like, let's just grab all the water from the oceans, actually now we got a problem. So again,
Well,
just
yeah.
unintended, we don't, I know I started this rabbit hole, but just the point being unintended consequences. So, uh, so we've got, we clean. What else can we do?
Not crash. This is where we have problems. And this is where when you look at the categories, you have the categories that are for landing missions on Mars, Europa, and Enceladus, category 4. And then you have the category for flying and orbiting. And sometimes our orbiters don't stay up. Sometimes our flybys fly into instead. Um, so don't crash. Bottom line, just don't crash.
Right. That's it. That's your plan, is to plan on not crashing.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's cheaper.
So do
Plus, you
you
get more science.
will there be a time when these kinds of planetary protections are no longer required? Like, can you imagine some time in the far future where we have either found life or found no life to the point where, like, okay, that's it, it's all dead, and we just don't care anymore?
This is where it gets tricky. If we find life, I want to believe, and I know I'm being a Pollyanna here, I want to believe that if we find that there is life of some form, that we will go, okay, we're good. We're going to watch this. We're going to let it advance. We're going to learn from whatever, go science. And we will limit our interactions to sealed habitats, go land on Phobos and not on Mars. I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, super wrong. I mean,
I know, I
there's no
know.
way that people, like, you imagine, you get the astronauts living even on a science station on Mars, and they are living in their tunnels underground, regretting this research expedition. And but they're gonna want one taste of the sun, and they're gonna put on their spacesuit, and they're gonna walk out onto the Martian surface and just be shaking out microbes into the soil. So, like,
And
once we get serious about moving to living on exploring, and what are we now? 2024. We're only 5 years away from SpaceX sending those first human colonists, hundreds at a time, to the surface of Mars. He says sarcastically.
and the one two things that gives me hope. The first is we're not going to get there by 2024. The second is in designing upcoming rovers and spacesuits. One of the big new design concepts that they've been testing out with the Desert Rats program out in the desert is the spacesuits essentially are attached to the outside of your spacecraft. And the reason is to prevent dust and grime from getting into the spacecraft. So you slide down into your spacesuit and climb back up. A hatch closes in your helmet, sealing you in. And then you reattach yourself later. So the outside of your suit is never touched by you, it only touches the outside world, and the stuff on the outside of the suit never gets into your spacecraft. I'm hoping that as we create more and more of these novel designs, that we'll be able to reduce our interactions with the outside world. And we may need to take lessons from archaeology as well. It is becoming the norm that when we find new and awesome archaeological sites, we don't dig them up the same way that we used to. We instead use ground penetrating radar, we use MRIs, we use whatever technology allows us to look in
Yeah.
without disturbing the samples.
Yep.
And hopefully we will figure out ways to do this same sort of remote sensing for life.
Well, I hope we get to this place in the future where it actually is a problem, right? Like, that we do
Yeah.
find life and we're like, oh, we're so glad we were careful, or we, uh, or that we do bring samples back and we find life. Like, wouldn't that be the greatest thing? So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Pamela, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great, Fraser. Talk to you later. And now we save.
All right. Now I have to do an extra thing. Split the track, delete one, save my project.
And this is
514.
Yeah, and hi dog.
I showed off our dog, our new dog in
I haven't
Skylius's stream.
seen. Can we see your new dog?
She's napping right now with cards, so I can't. Okay. But she is a sweetheart.
Yeah, Stella is on the bed in here, and she just stood up. Nope, she turned around. She's laying back down. Okay.
Let's get into some questions. Don't have a lot of time, so Chai Latte Nebula says, under which category would the theoretical submarine on Titan go?
That one falls into category 4 quite soundly, where you sterilize the bejesus out of that thing.
Yeah, moving into category 5 because it's now
category 5 is sample return.
Sample return, right? So category 4, like extra category 4 plus because they now think that, I mean, not only is there potential life in the hydrocarbon portion of Titan, but also under the crust of ice, there could be a whole another subsurface ocean. So you got like 2 whole places, and you're swimming in this stuff.
Literally.
Yeah, man, that just makes me think of that cool image that we saw, the video of Titan last night in the Weekly Space Hangout. I should find that again. Let's see, more questions. People are talking about their various invasive species that they've got enjoying.
I hate stink bugs.
Yeah.
They like to live in our house in the winter, and they're small enough to fit through the gaps in our window frames. And every time I turn on a space heater, all of the sleeping stink bugs come out, and Eddie tries to eat them. And when they are angered and give off their stink, it attracts other stink bugs to come and help defend the first stink bug.
Well, you get that when you like eat blackberries, the horrible invasive Himalayan blackberries that I mentioned. Stink bugs love them, and so if you aren't careful and you're just like popping blackberries in your mouth, every now and then you get a stink bug in your mouth and you bite. They
also love our apple tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Larry Beckham is asking, do you think dinosaur bacteria may have 60 to 65 millions of years ago on Mars? So one of my favorite, and I've mentioned this many times before, I will keep mentioning this over and over again. My favorite caption ever was in Scientific American, and I'm paraphrasing. It went along the lines of the shock wave from the input of the impact of the Yucatan Peninsula Chicxulub asteroid was so great that it flung soil, trees, and dinosaurs at escape velocities up into the air. So the first big life forms to leave the planet Earth were very dead dinosaurs.
Right. So you could find dinosaur bones on Mars, but
in little pieces.
Because a dinosaur was ejected from Earth and off into space, and it floated through space and landed on Mars. Ben Kalo says, lots of talk about protoplanetary disks lately. What mission telescope collects that data? What tools do they use to observe these? Radio.
Atacama Large Millimeter Array is doing killer work. It can very easily see at those millimeter wavelengths dust-forming disks that will become planets, and they see the gaps of the young planets in these disks.
Yeah, the ALMA is amazing. So ALMA's a radio telescopes, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is the European Southern Observatory's very large telescope. They also have been producing some amazing images of of protoplanetary disks. But there was this, you're right, there's this great collection that came from ALMA, like 20 different protoplanetary disks. And it's just amazing to see the variety.
And there's new press releases coming out of them every week as they discover a
Yeah.
new something amazing from one of these discs.
I'm going to bring up one of these images so you can just see like the new 20 different discs. Oh, and then and this, all right, I'll show people this picture here. The one here of no, this is not a photograph from ALMA. This is the one it's the one of the binary star system that flipped its
Oh
planetary
yeah, that
disk
was super
on edge.
cool.
Oh, and you want to hear some irony? It got put onto AstroPH today. So you went and bought a account to Nature, and I found it on AstroPH today.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, I'm sure it will do me good to have. So one of the things I'm dealing with is
oh
I don't have access to a library. I haven't for 2 years, and I'm now at a new institute and still don't have that. So I just broke down. I bought a subscription to
yeah.
Nature.
I'm going to show off. So I'm showing off these protoplanetary disks on this wonderful Universe Today website because it looks the only place that I could find it, as they comprehensively cover all of the news about space. So look at these different. So these are 20 different protoplanetary disks captured by ALMA, and some of them that are really fascinating is this one here. For example, you've got, Pamela can't see, so I will show her. You've got these spiral arms around a protoplanetary disk, and this one, like, is it two planetary disks around two different stars in a binary system?
I don't know if it's binary or
Yeah.
superimposed. So this particular study, they were looking at a very young open cluster. So they have tightly together a whole bunch of different young systems that aren't at too great a distance. And this allows them to basically see this stage in a myriad of different systems. And over time, we're going to be able to build up through sets of observations like this of disks at a variety of different ages around stars of a variety of different masses, the formation history of solar systems.
Is this a planet forming here? Is that a planet? Look at these spiral arms.
These are the things we're figuring out.
It's amazing. Yeah. Thanks, Alma.
I have fully embraced my love of ALMA.
Yeah. Grant Lanning asks, could the eruptions of the Earth's supervolcanoes have blasted debris into escape velocity?
Oh, yeah.
You love some supervolcanoes.
Well, what's not to love?
The horrible death.
But we haven't had any since we've had civilization.
Alpha Photo and Video asks, do all the precautions were inspired from the Prime Directive from Star Trek?
This actually predates the Prime Directive, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, I wonder, though, so much of Star Trek really pulled its science and just some of the thinking from what was going on in the latest technologies. Like, if you look at, like, mirror universe and warp drives and ion engines and antimatter and all of these things were all happening in science at the time. So it's just amazing. Prime Direction, I'm going to see Prime Directive.
So what I can tell you is these categories predate Star Trek, but I can't tell you if Star Trek was or wasn't inspired by this.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't see anyone talking about connecting those things together. Quadlibit asks, given the rapid progress of the direction of exoplanets, especially some of them in habitable zones, when will we finally get the answer to that most important question? Will JWST finally launch?
That question is off limits. I refuse to discuss that spacecraft for some time.
You really are looking like a genius by pushing back any conversation about missions that haven't launched. Can you imagine if we had dug into James Webb, oh, I don't know,
Oh, and
10,
they asked us to a
10,
whole lot of
10
times.
years ago? Yeah,
Oh yeah.
people wanted us to cover James Webb 10 years ago when the ideas were starting to come out, and here we are,
And I was
still.
just like, it's dead to me.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
It's now very dead to
Yeah,
me.
show me the spacecraft in space, and we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now TESS, for example, is turning up actual planets, multiple planets. So,
And there's
have we
nothing to
done
do the follow-up that it was designed to have.
what James Webb? Oh, right. No, you can do follow up
Some of it
with
on the
other
ground.
Earth-based telescopes and stuff, but to do the like, it's going to be heartbreaking when TESS does turn up. Hey, what do you know? We found an Earth-sized world orbiting a sun-like star in the habitable zone of its parent star, perfectly the way Earth would be. And James Webb isn't around yet to be able to actually perform those observations. So, wah wah.
And the thing about tests that is so frustrating is TESS is designed to look at nearby stars to find worlds that we can then spectroscopically look at, where it identifies that a transit is in the process of happening. And while that transit is happening, spin the telescope around, look at it, measure the constituent atmosphere of that planet. But if you don't have anything that can look at the atmosphere of that planet during that transit, you're stuck.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The extremely large telescope is coming. Just wait for 2026.
Is that like the 30 meter?
No, it's the 39 meter.
I know, but it's one of these things where we don't know how long these massive telescopes are actually going to take to use. And
2026.
so one of the reasons that I am a curmudgeon about when telescopes are going to work is my dissertation. I was supposed to be piloting use of a spectrograph built by my advisor, mounted on the Hobby Eberly telescope. We were going to get dozens of spectra of galaxies per cluster for dozens of clusters. It's going to be a great program. And we ended up with 8 spectra total of galaxies in 2 clusters because the telescope didn't work up to spec. Someone did the study I was planning to do a few years later, won a ton of awards. Curmudgeon aspect 1. Curmudgeon aspect 2 is I was supposed to be getting X-ray data with a Japanese satellite that my advisor was part of that didn't work when it launched. So I couldn't use X-ray data either. So that left me using an Apollo era ground-based telescope to do all my research, which
Yep.
caused me to go into journalism.
5 Hubble Space Telescopes or 1 James Webb? What would you prefer?
You can't do with any Hubbles the science you can do with James
Oh,
Webb,
I
'cause they
know.
don't work in
I
the same
know.
spectrum. If you could give me a Hubble priced telescope that worked in the same regimes, just at a lower resolution than James Webb, sure, I'll start there.
No, you get 5 more Hubble Space Telescopes. So in other words, you get more telescopes like Hubble, so people can get more telescope time. Right?
Yeah.
Like right now, that's the problem, is that Hubble is oversubscribed. So if you could clear
Yeah.
up the backlog, would you take that over a next generation telescope like James Webb?
No, because the thing is that as long as you're talking about wavelengths that get through the atmosphere, we are now able to build ground-based telescopes. And this wasn't true in the 90s when we launched Hubble. We are now able to build ground-based telescopes that have larger surface area and the same resolution as Hubble, allowing us
Right.
to see the same or better resolution of even fainter objects.
Yeah, like the Very Large Telescope is
Yeah.
more sensitive
It just
than
doesn't have the
Hubble.
press engine.
Right.
So
It's pretty good.
that's the big discrepancy
Yeah.
is Hubble has tons of money sunk into getting its stuff publicized.
Yeah, but I've seen like side-by-side comparisons of pictures taken
yeah.
by the full interferometer of the Very Large Telescope, 4 telescopes acting as one using adaptive optics, and they are better
You can't beat the
resolution.
science.
They are better science than what Hubble
Yeah.
can do now.
Yeah.
And they're here on ground, and they are a fraction of the price of what Hubble. And so that's, I mean, that's what the extremely large telescope is. The next big one, right, is that it's the 39-meter telescope. It will brute force be able to see anything in the universe that you want to see. The stuff that's being done with tricks today, gravitational lensing and things like that, it will be able to just see directly right out almost to the edge of the observable universe. So, and from the
The
ground, which is amazing. And
the
for only a couple of $1 billion compared to.
and the only catch here is these ground-based telescopes can't see the colors that James Webb is tuned to. We're putting JWST in a special place
Right.
where it's far from the Earth, won't deal with a lot of the light pollution of, well, having a planet nearby. It has that sun shield to protect it from sunlight. It's going to be cold and dark and see colors that don't even make it through our
Yeah,
atmosphere.
yeah. So it's going to be seeing it's like I mean really James Webb is Spitzer 2.0. It's not
Yeah,
the follow on
it's
of
not
Hubble.
Hubble.
And it is going to see the stuff that is this temperature, this incredibly cold temperature that you just can't produce here on Earth. Yep.
Well, you can produce it, you just can't see it from space.
You can't see space sources that are generating wavelengths that are that cold.
Yeah.
But James Webb will do it.
Yeah.
Yep. Charlie's saying that the VLT in interferometer mode should have a higher resolution than the ELT. Are you sure? Maybe it's resolution because the telescopes are separated, so
apart.
they have a larger baseline than the collecting power. So it won't be able to see as dim of objects as the extremely large telescope, but it can see, has a finer resolution. Yes. All hail interferometer. You know what would be amazing? Those 5 Hubble Space Telescopes in space, flying in formation, acting like an interferometer. Yes, please.
Yeah, we're not that good.
I know. It could like find terrestrial planets. It could be a finder for terrestrial planets, maybe.
We're still not that good.
Yeah. Someone should fly a space interferometer, though. But like, if there's like literally one thing that we've agreed upon for 10 years now or 11 years now, is that someone should fly a space interferometer.
It's true.
So there you are. I saw a really cool tech demonstration of a photonic drive used for flying an interferometer. So it's a spacecraft that shoots a laser out the back, and the laser provides incredibly precise propulsion so that it can reorganize itself to be the right distance apart from other spacecraft down to the nanometer, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, you just shoot out a few more photons if you need to, to move a little to the right or the left. So it's a crazy idea. Let's see. Mark Sheeran is asking, will we get higher resolution photos of MU69?
Uh, yes, they're
Yeah.
scheduled. So this is 2014 MU69, the object that New Horizons visited New Year's Day-ish, depending on where you are on the planet. The highest resolution images, I believe they said, are expected in February.
Right. Remember that the transmission speeds are incredibly low to transmit from New Horizons back to Earth, and they're going to take 20 months to transmit all of the data back for us to be able to see them. So February, you can make it to February. Although it really showed the extreme limits. The fact that the spacecraft got to did the flyby of MU69, and yet it wasn't like this crazy live event. It's like someone looking at their watch and going, "Yep, it should have gone by now." Get a signal. It's not dead, but we have to wait for months to get pictures.
Yeah, well, at least they were able to get the highly compressed, basically spotter camera stuff back faster.
Yeah, yeah. And there's been some new images have come back. Have you seen it rotating like
Yeah.
spinning like a pinwheel? That's really cool. Grant Lanning asks, given how much time and engineering goes into building space telescopes, why do we only build one and not several at the same time? Material cost can't be that much, can it?
Well, they actually, I believe they built two versions of Hubble. LRO and MRO are essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
One was, a lot of it was the backup instruments for the other. So where we can, we do build two, but we generally don't get enough money to do more than that.
The Vikings
Yeah,
were the same, and then you had the Voyagers were the same, and the Voyagers were actually just an extension of the Mariner program, so a lot of the
right.
same. So you just took
And Cassini was another extension of that same body type.
and so there actually is a lot of spacecraft. They look kind of different, but they are the same chassis with different instruments popped on board.
Yeah.
Curiosity and the Mars 2020 rover are essentially the same thing, just
Yeah.
with different instruments. So they absolutely do this when they can. All right, we've reached the end of our hour, so let's wrap things up. Pamela, thanks so much for hanging out, bringing the brain. Everybody, thanks for watching us. Sorry we had to do this at a funny time, but life intervenes.
I will be in Boston. If you are in New England and have free time, come to the Aresia Science Fiction Science Fantasy Conference at the Boston Park Plaza. I would love to say hello.
That sounds like fun. All right, so and then we'll see you next week. All right, and don't forget, Sunday night, lunar eclipse.
Yes.
Look up. You can't miss
Yes.
it. All right, see you later, everybody.
Bye-bye.